Draft week, one of my favorite weeks of the year, because it means football season is right around the corner. Now we got some things to get into. Both Marcus Gilbert, the right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, has decided to retire after 10 years, and Sean Lee, the former linebacker of the Dallas Cowboys, retired after 11 years. Now, I want to go into depth. Marcus Gilbert was not probably the greatest tackle I've ever seen, but he was a guy that was very good for a very long time, and there's ranks to this. There's ranks as, wow, that's one of the best tackles I've ever seen, best of his generation, or, man, it's hard to beat him, or whatever all these analysts try and say. Then there's, man, that guy, he's so good, he can do it all, he's a good player, you can see they rally and they build around him as he's a good cornerstone for the team. Or, man, this guy's serviceable, he's good, we probably should look for someone else in the future, but for right now, he's okay. He's alright, we don't really have to look until like a few years down the road. Or, yeah, this guy, there's probably better options in the free agent market. Maybe we should look around, maybe we should draft somebody. Marcus Gilbert is in the second tier of that. He's a guy who's really good. He was a cornerstone, one of the better tackles in the league. Not the top guy, not on the top tier, but he was on that second tier, and he was pretty high on that one. And speaking for Sean Lee, a lot of players and former people have talked about it. There was a reason why he was nicknamed the General, because he knew everything. He was so smart, so educated. He knew how to not just he didn't just know everything. He knew how to do everything in terms of he knew how to play every position on that linebacker crew. He could play middle linebacker. He could play outside linebacker. If you wanted him to only play a little bit, he could do that. And he had done that in the few previous years. In the last 2 or 3 years. And he could do it. Because he was smart enough to understand, well, I'm in the older side of 30. I gotta start just letting these young guys do it. I can tell them what they're doing wrong, but they gotta do it. And that's what he realized. So, he decides to hang up, and Sean, I think, a lot of people have said this, that he had Hall of Fame level talent. And I agree with that. I think he was really good. I love watching him. I think his body just betrayed him. And that happens in the league. And you feel sorry for those guys. You have to feel sorry for those guys. Because you know, man, if they got that opportunity to be healthy, what we would have seen would have been unbelievable. Like, they were talking about Joe Namath. I was watching a video on Joe Namath a few weeks ago, and they were talking about his knee was never healthy. When he came in the AFL, when they merged together, in college he had hurt his knee, and he had to get surgery when he got drafted, or when he went to the AFL in 1960. And they were fixing his knee. They fixed his knee, and so he never was fully healthy. And there was when his doctor told Joe Namath's mother, he said, when Joe becomes 40, he will have the knees of a 70-year-old man. So he was never healthy. Just never. And that's just, it's hard to understand. You feel bad for those guys because you feel like if they were 100%, they would have been good. They would have been a Hall of Famer. And like, luckily for Joe Namath, he is. But like, there's people like Sean Lee who their body just gives up on him. It's very difficult. But congratulations to both of them on two great careers, and hopefully in the next venture of life, they are excited and happy in their transition of moving away from the game. Maybe it's the decision is coaching. Everyone has said that Sean Lee should be a coach, which is easy to create positions on the NFL staff because you can make him, I don't know, an assistant or junior assistant linebackers coach or assistant linebackers coach. Gerard Mayo is an inside linebackers coach. It used to be there was a linebackers coach and that's it. No, now you have inside linebackers coach, outside linebackers coach, pass rushing linebackers coach. And then you have linebackers coach on top of that. It's just the way it is now. So it's very easy to create positions for these coaches to be put on your staff. Moving on, the Ravens have traded Orlando Brown Jr. to the Chiefs. The Chiefs get Brown Jr., a 2021 second-round pick, and a 2022 sixth-round pick, as the Ravens get a 2021 first-round pick, third-round pick, and fourth-round pick, and a 2022 fifth-round pick. This move doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't understand why you're giving the Chiefs more ammunition in terms of their offensive line when they just got rid of both their tackles last year, a few months ago. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And this is actually the story of Orlando Brown Jr. His father was Orlando Brown Sr., who played in the NFL, actually played for the Ravens, who got blind in one eye and continued playing his career. What ended up happening was when he was early on in his career, they didn't wear face shields. And the flag, there was a flag thrown, and the flags used to have sand in them. They sometimes still do. It's sand or rocks, usually. And so it's easier to throw. Well, since they didn't have face shields, they couldn't guard anything. So the flag got thrown, and it hit him in the eye. It made him blind in one eye. And he quit football for a few years, then came back, played the rest of his career half blind. About 5, 10, 15 years ago, he had passed away. And Orlando Brown wanted to play in the NFL because of his father. Because of how good Orlando was. He was called Zeus. That's how good he was. He was almost a god in terms of playing offensive lineman. And actually, that's how, when Orlando Brown got drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, it meant more to him. Because now he's going to play for his father's old team. And now Orlando Brown moves to Kansas City, where he gets to guard another young quarterback, a Super Bowl champion in Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot more pressure, because if he gets hurt, now it's on you. Atlanta, moving into the next half, but Atlanta is getting trade calls on Julio Jones. Now this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because not Orlando Brown, Julio Jones' contract is nearly impossible to move. It's so oversized. It's like the Matt Ryan contract done by the previous regime. They just gave him basically everything they wanted. So it's almost nearly impossible to trade. It's like the Jared Goff contract. You almost have to give something back to them anyway. You gotta give them a player and then like a pick. That's what happened. So, yes, they get traded for Matt Stafford, but they had to give another pick just so the Lions would take the contract of Jared Goff. Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, though, it's almost hard to move. And I love watching Julio Jones. To me, he's like not the second coming of Calvin Johnson, but he's the most like him. And I'm within the last decade. Because and I'm including DK Metcalf into this because I don't think DK's that kind of guy. He's not a guy that's like, don't get me wrong, he's a tremendous physical specimen, but he's not Calvin Johnson. Maybe T.O., not really probably. And Because what happened with Calvin Johnson, what happened with Julio Jones is Mel Kiper said when they got drafted that they can't catch. They can't catch. And now you have one guy in the Hall of Fame and you have another guy who's probably on his way to the Hall of Fame. So it's like, there's never going to be another Calvin Johnson, but Julio Jones is the closest thing to it. The Cowboys are going to wait on the fifth-year option for Leighton Vander Esch. They are going to wait until next week after the draft to have this conversation. And I think that's somewhat smart. The deadline is May 5th for these fifth-year options. But it's because they want to see, are we going to draft a linebacker? And if we do, is now Leighton as needed? Because if we don't take the contract, if we don't take the fifth-year option, we have to pay him next year. But if we do, we don't have to give him a new contract next year. We could wait. Which, like Sean Lee, Leighton Vander Esch has an injury history. He got hurt this year. He had a neck surgery. And then the year prior, he had a neck stinger, which he had to get worked on. So it's very much all over the place for him. I think if you're Leighton Vander Esch, you hope you can have a healthy year and the rest of your career is healthy. But I think it's a smart idea to wait. Wait and see what happens. The Dolphins have decided not to wait though. They traded Eric Flowers to the Washington football team in exchange for late round picks. This move makes somewhat sense. Let me tell you how Eric Flowers' career has gone so far. He was in New York, kind of was under the radar tackle. When his contract expired, the Giants didn't re-up him, and he went and signed a 3-year deal with the Miami Dolphins. This year he was pretty good, not terrible, but obviously they moved him because now there's a lot of these young tackles in this draft. The two best ones are Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater. If you draft those two a guy like that, it's like, oh well, here's a guy who's very cheap. Here's a guy who's very expensive. That's pretty cut and dry at that point. And for picks, yeah, take more picks, you get more players, you get more chances to pick a good player or a great player. Or a player that can help your team in any particular way. So, I think it was a good move for both teams, because also, whoever you bring in, if you're Washington, whether it's quarterback or whatever, you need a guy who can block for him. Smart move. The Bucks have picked up Vita Vea's fifth-year option, and I think Vita Vea is a good football player. I think he's very interchangeable. You can put him in a tackle. You can put him in a defensive tackle. You can put him in a defensive end. He's very quick. I just think and we saw it in the second year he was in Todd Bowles' system. He was very good. So, I do like the pick. I do like the fifth-year pickup for his option. I think that was a good idea. The Pats, who are thinking about trading up, they were talking with Atlanta. We're thinking about trading up with them. That is still going on, to my knowledge. They were studying Kyle Trask, the Florida quarterback, if they don't get up to the top 5 or 4 or 5. Kyle Trask, this quarterback class, if you get besides Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Jones, it's not very pleasant. It's very hit or miss, probably. You're talking about those 4 or 5 guys that go in the first round. You're going to have to wait till like rounds 4, late 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 7th, because it's so bad. It's one of those drafts that it's just the quarterbacks aren't good in this draft. If you don't count Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, and Jones. The Eagles are trying to trade back up into the top 10, and why not? You need a playmaker. I believe Devontae Smith will be outside the top 10, but if you try and trade into the top 10, you gotta try and, what are you gonna give? You gotta trade up so much draft capital, and where do you go with it? We'll see what that has in store. Who does San Francisco take at number 3? Well, I think they should take Justin Fields. People are saying that Mac Jones was just a smokescreen. They're taking Justin Fields. I do agree that they should take Justin Fields because he's athletic. This tells you, okay, you got 1 year, Jimmy G. You got 1 year. Where Mac Jones is like, okay, Jimmy, we don't know how long you got. You probably got, I don't know, a few games, and if you don't do good, okay, here goes Mac Jones. But with Justin Fields, you got maybe 1 year, and that's all you have. So, but I think that Fields would get drafted by the 49ers because he's athletic. He's a lot like Kyler Murray, very aggressive, but he can also do what Aaron Rodgers does, which is extend the play, make a big throw. He has a strong arm. I would see him going to San Francisco. And the reason why I have him over Mac Jones is because Mac Jones is so much like Jimmy G. Not mobile. Not very mobile. Not athletic as much. He has a strong arm. So in that case, he's a lot like Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen. But the concern with Mac Jones is, can he tame his arm? And what I mean by that is, can he hold his arm is his arm good enough to go deep? And because there was times where he would, in his pro day, he missed a few throws, and Belichick was there, and Kyle Shanahan was there. And when he missed a throw, it looked like when the dad is disappointed in his son, but doesn't want to say anything, just keeps shaking his head back and forth. That's what it looked like. And I think that's just because he's a strong-arm kid. As I said, he's a lot like Josh Allen, whose first year was not very good, but his second year got better. And then his third year, once he tames his arm, now we're seeing how good he is. Same thing with Mac Jones. We have to see, can he tame his arm? And if he can, he'll be good. We'll just have to wait and see. The GM for the Packers has said Aaron Rodgers is their guy. Drafted is considered unsure because they drafted players they didn't need last year. Besides A.J. Dillon, they drafted offensive linemen and a quarterback they did not need. So, you better be Rodgers is your guy, or else he's going to ask for a trade and get out of there. The Bengals have hinted that they could draft Ja'Marr Chase, and I think Ja'Marr Chase is one of the better receivers. I think he's the top wide receiver in this draft, and that would be a good move, suggesting that the Bengals lost A.J. Green, and they only have Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. I think that Ja'Marr Chase would be a good pick. Devontae Smith has said that we are football players and not bodybuilders. This comes after the quote-unquote red flag that he had when they said he weighed in at 166 pounds. The concern is when you get drafted, you're supposed to weigh around 180, 190. And you still should put on weight a little bit. The trick is to put on weight, keep speed up too. They don't know if they can do that with these Juice Pro Days that these guys were running at 160. The concern is, if you put on 40 pounds, would you be okay? And you need to put more than that. You almost got to put on 50 pounds. So it's a little ridiculous. But in this draft, I've heard a lot of people say it's Ja'Marr Chase, Waddle, and then Smith. And Smith is the third guy. And that's just one of those things that happens in the NFL. Speaking of draft coverage, we will have a video up on Friday after day 1 of the draft to explain some of the quarterbacks go in the first 4 or 5 picks, as well as who gets drafted by the Cowboys, Chiefs, Bucks, and Patriots, as well as who gets drafted by the Washington football team, the Eagles, and the Giants. The Pittsburgh Steelers have picked up Minka Fitzpatrick's fifth-year option. The Bears did the same with Roquan Smith. Jim Harbaugh guarantees that Lamar Jackson's fifth-year option will be picked up. And finally, AB re-signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's a one-year deal worth $3.1 million. And this happened relatively quickly. It was because once he got through the legal issues and settled those things, he got a contract offer pretty much immediately. So I think it's a good move. AB's a good player. He just had some legal issues that he had to figure out, and that's what happened. But what do you guys think? Who should the 49ers pick at number 3? You decide.